Good morning. My name is Jennifer Turner, and I'd like to welcome you to our meeting today. It's a great sunny, cool day in Washington, D.C., where the cherry blossoms are peaking. And I'm really glad that you could come in and join us today. I've been directing the China Environment Forum for 21 years. And over that time, as the name implies, we've done work on energy and environmental issues in China, focused a lot on water and waste issues. And over the past year, we've been expanding our waste work, targeting plastic waste, looking throughout Southeast Asia and China. But in Southeast Asia, our biggest focus has been Indonesia, which is responsible for about 10% of the global plastic leakage into the ocean, second only to China. Encouragingly, the Indonesian government has set up a collaborative action plan to reduce marine plastic waste by 70% by 2025. And we've seen a lot of the government partnerships with grassroots groups, and most notably USAID. In fact, in a lot of our, in finding authors and speakers for other meetings, we found that there's a lot of people who are partners with USAID. And I thought, you know what? It's high time that we get USAID to come and tell their story. And in fact, I have to thank Claire Romanik. I have to really thank you because you helped us find some really great authors for a publication we're putting out next week called Closing the Loop on Indonesia's Plastic Waste. So today I've invited Claire and three of her partners who are active in working on plastic waste in Indonesia to come tell their stories. Now, Claire's a senior urban specialist and ocean plastic specialist at USAID, and she's going to kick off the panel highlighting the accomplishments of USAID's Municipal Waste Recycling Program, and also talk about some goals of a new city program. And I really think it's great that they're focusing on cities, because across the world, cities are indeed the front line in dealing with the plastic waste crisis. Following Claire, we've got Mo Nurhadi, who's going to share a story of how the Bintari Foundation has helped strengthen recycling in the city of Semarang by building profitable waste banks and also having really great partnerships with communities. And then our third speaker, as I was joking her beforehand, I wanted her to see her come in her wetsuit to speak today. It's Tanya Puspa Lestari. She's the founder and executive director of Divers Clean Action. And she's going to share about how the USAID project has helped activate their youth plastic pollution cleanup movement even more. But as you'll see when she talks, they're not just about picking up waste. They're about education policy. It's really a dynamic and inspiring group. Now, to create infrastructure to clean up waste, to close the loop on plastic waste, cities need financing. And that's where April Crow is going to come in and talk about her work at Circulate Capital, investing in sustainable waste value chains to create a second life for post-consumer plastic waste. And also, I mean, while Tanya has diving gear, I mean, April, you've got the cool term. You get to create catalytic capital. And I'm really kind of, I'll leave that little tidbit there for people like, what the heck is catalytic capital? Well, she's going to tell you about that. So I'm going to stop talking now. Except I want to mention that you in the audience have the role of asking questions. If you look below this web stream, you'll see that there's our Twitter and an email to elijah.patton@wilsoncenter.org. So tweet us, email us some questions. And Claire, I'd like you to, could you share your screen? And each speaker will take about 8 minutes to tell their stories. So get ready with those questions, audience. Thank you so much, Claire.
Good morning. Thank you, Jennifer. I'm going to talk about USAID's work on the front line of Indonesia's efforts to reduce ocean plastic pollution. My name is Claire Romanik, and I'm the lead ocean plastics advisor for the United States Agency for International Development, which is known as USAID. While USAID's support to Indonesia on the issue of ocean plastic pollution is fairly new, I wanted to note that the United States and the Republic of Indonesia signed their first economic and technical cooperation agreement in 1950. So we've been working together on development challenges for 70 years. Ocean plastic pollution is a major development challenge today. And with a fast-growing economy and a large coastal urban population, Indonesia is on the forefront of this challenge. Indonesia is experiencing an exponential growth in waste generated, particularly from plastic packaging. And much of this is due to the increase of single-use plastic applications that include straws, bags, bottles, sachets, and food containers as demand for prepackaged food and products increases. We know that major investments are needed to reduce, reuse, recycle, and properly dispose of plastic. And the global economy and the private sector are ready to invest, but in developing cities, the enabling conditions for these investments don't exist. USAID is building this foundation in a number of ways. Over the past 5 years, USAID's Municipal Waste Recycling Program has provided 30 grants worth $5,500,000 for locally led initiatives in 4 countries: Indonesia, the Philippines, Sri Lanka, and Vietnam. The primary focus of the program is to reduce land-based sources of marine plastic pollution. 7 of these grants were in Indonesia and supported projects ranging from community waste banks to youth-led awareness-raising programs. By the end of 2020, these grant projects had resulted in 7,000 metric tons of plastic recycled, with an additional 4,000 metric tons of reduced plastic through plastic waste reduction approaches, totaling 11,000 metric tons of plastic diverted from the environment. We estimate that through the grant activities, 3.5 million people have directly benefited from waste management services and policies across the 4 countries. Another area of impact has been affecting behavior change. Behavior change begins with education to raise awareness, but it must be translated into peer pressure and incentives to encourage participation in 3R behaviors of reduce, reuse, and recycle. USAID grantees were very innovative in educating the community about the impact of mismanaged waste, and were successful in motivating individuals to take steps to improve the quality of life in their community and the larger environment. And engaging youth is an example of an innovative approach to educating a community because it has a multiplier effect. Introducing educational modules on ocean plastic pollution in the schools is producing a new generation of environmental champions, young people who care deeply about what happens in their schools, homes, and communities. They take this knowledge home and teach their parents and family members. We estimate that our grantees have engaged 200,000 youth in their activities. USAID grantees also found ways to promote 3R behaviors for a more circular economy. In a circular economy, we want to minimize waste by enabling resources to be used for as long as possible, including through reuse and recycling. But a major challenge is the contamination of recyclables by other types of waste, thus making it more difficult for them to be recycled at their highest value. Through our grant activities across the 4 countries, we encouraged 200,000 households and businesses to practice separation at source of solid waste, which reduces contamination. In the case of Indonesia, separation at source was enforced by providing a financial incentive to households who could sell their recyclables to a community waste bank. In the city of Sorong in West Papua, our grantee helped set up almost 100 collection points to make it convenient for people to sell their recyclables to the waste bank. USAID grantees also introduced or positively affected over 50 pieces of waste management legislation, mostly at the local level. In Indonesia, the governor of Jakarta signed a governor's regulation that mandates the use of environmentally friendly shopping bags at shopping centers, malls, supermarkets, and traditional markets. The regulation was instituted in June 2020, and our grantee, the Plastic Bag Diet Movement, was the leading Indonesian NGO in rolling out the regulation, as well as advocating for the passage of this regulation and providing technical assistance to the government. Much of our program's success in reducing plastic waste usage is really attributed to the implementation of such regulations. Although the Municipal Waste Recycling Program is ending this year, USAID has funded a new program that we call Clean Cities, Blue Ocean. And it's now getting down to work in Indonesia, as well as 6 other countries. In collaboration with the government of Indonesia, including Bappenas and relevant technical ministries, Clean Cities Blue Ocean will provide support to 3 Indonesian cities that can become models for improved solid waste management and a circular economy. To build local capacity, we will work with our partner cities on creating and strengthening a long-range solid waste management plan. Not a plan to sit on a shelf, but a robust plan based on a waste characterization study and that details investment needs and partnership opportunities. I should point out here that, as in many other countries, the informal sector is responsible for much of Indonesia's waste collection, and particularly important in harvesting recyclables. So this will be factored into these plans. We will help to improve their livelihoods and safety as we seek to integrate informal waste collectors into the formal waste management system. Another priority is improving the investment climate for the 3 Rs. For example, waste banks are a great concept, but most are not financially sustainable. We plan to connect them to waste generators, manufacturing corporations, and brand companies that can help them scale up and withstand market volatility. We will also help cities assess which technology and infrastructure solutions are appropriate for their context. Finally, we believe it's important to support a constructive dialogue involving the government and the private sector on how to improve the policy and legislative framework for the 3 Rs. While USAID's grants and technical assistance are making impacts, to make large-scale progress on this issue, we need to mobilize much greater amounts of funding from the private sector. That is why USAID entered into a partnership with impact investor Circulate Capital to help incentivize greater investment in much-needed waste management and recycling infrastructure. You'll hear more from April Crow about this later in the program. One last aspect of our work that I want to emphasize is the role of women. Women play important roles in waste management in their homes and communities. They're also active in the waste management and recycling sectors, although they are often paid less than men for their work. Clean Cities Blue Ocean will establish a new support and incubator network for women in the waste management and recycling sectors that will provide training, mentorship, coaching, and access to startup capital to support women entrepreneurs. We aim to reach women at the lowest level of the value chain, as well as successful women who wish to grow their businesses. That's a snapshot of what USAID-supported programs have achieved and plan to do going forward. For more information about our work, I encourage you to check out our website at the address at the bottom of this slide. You can also sign up for our newsletter at the bit.ly address at the top of the slide. Thank you for the opportunity to be part of this panel.
Thanks so much, Claire. And if it's okay, Claire, after the meeting, we'd like to post your PowerPoint online, if that's okay, because I think it'd be really informative for folks. Yeah, so if we can, I've got lots of questions, but I'm going to hold them. Mo, could I turn to you to tell us the story of Bintari Foundation's work?
Sure. Thank you, Jennifer. I want to share my presentation. I hope you can see the screen.
Yes, we can see the screen fine. Thank you so much.
Okay. Again, good morning, everyone. My name is Mohnur Hadi from Bintari Foundation. Today, I want to share our project in turning trash into cash by improving plastic waste recycling in the city of Semarang, Indonesia. Semarang city has 1.8 million inhabitants and produce more than 1,200 tons waste every day. About 900 tons are sent into the landfill, while the remaining waste are illegally dumped, disposed to the river. In small portion, it is also being recycled due to the work of community and informal sectors. Around 30% of residential area is not covered by the city waste management services because community has either low capacity or no capacity to organize waste collection. So in Indonesia, you can see in the picture that waste management governance is divided into two phases. The first phase is collection from household into temporary storage. It is organized independently by community and financed by household fee every month. While the second phase is handling or transporting from temporary storage into the landfill. It is belong to city waste management services, and it is financed by waste retribution collected by the city. So this system actually is discriminative. Why? And it's also challenging to solve the whole waste leakage, because some communities have a limited capacity to self-organize waste collection, especially low-income community living in slum area or living in geographically steep area. They cannot afford waste collection fee, which is actually only $1 to $3 per month. But for low-income community, it means something. There are also technical problem, social and economical barrier to organize waste collection in the community. Finally, rivers and empty spaces become a cheap option for them to dispose waste. So what Bintari does to prevent waste leakage? We support waste bank. What is waste bank? Waste bank is a model to attract household, especially in unserved area, to sort and collect recyclable material and then sell them as income generation. In Semarang, with the support of MWRP program, Bintari support 52 waste banks, empower more than 7,500 women as waste bank members. Bintari support training, provide small equipment, and also the most important thing is connect the waste bank into the recycling market. In average, they collect more than 200 tons of recyclable material per year, and then earn 19,000 US dollar per year as saving. Maybe this amount considered as small amount, but it means a lot for the low-income community. For example, within using their saving, they can use that for revolving loan service and also start a new business, either for a group of women or for the waste bank itself. And also, waste bank is not only collecting recyclable material, but through our support, poor community can also transfer money, pay electricity bill, pay insurance, buy a ticket through the waste bank. So waste bank has a cooperation with a national bank, and then they can do a financial service in cooperation with national bank. So the waste bank get commission from the partner banks and also from the companies. And we also facilitate a collaboration between waste bank and waste producer. In our case, waste bank only collect the valuable waste, but many wastes have low value, such as multi-layer plastic, flexible plastic, and also plastic bag. This is really a challenging issue, and without any incentive, maybe a waste picker or waste bank is resistant to collect that. And at the end, this type of plastic often end up in the river or ocean. So to face this challenge, Bintari works with a national company, Indofood. Indofood is a food and beverage company. They have initiative to take back their plastic packaging. In cooperation with Bintari, we organize waste bank and also noodle stalls, because noodle is their main product. So across Marang, we organize 73 noodle stalls. So Indofood support equipment, set up a storage space for the waste bank and also for the noodle stall, and also provide reward system according to the performance of the waste bank and the noodle stalls. The Take Back initiative, in a year, they successfully collect about 800 kilograms of noodle packaging, or equal to 400,000 noodle packaging. And also, they also collect 48 tons other type of waste. Yeah, from this project, what the lesson we can learn? We can say that even though waste bank mostly solve valuable waste, but waste bank also have limitation. However, waste bank is a good tool to educate people, especially people in a low-income community, to sort their waste and then to collect recyclable material and then to sell it as income generation. We also learned that the waste management governance can be part of problem, but it can also be part of solution. Just to give example, when waste collection is handled by community, it is a kind of discrimination to low-income community because they have low capacity to organize that. So at the end, they cannot organize waste collection, and then waste finally end up into the river or in the ocean. So we suggest to the government to handle waste collection, start from the household until the landfill. So they can subsidize people living in low-income community. And also from the project, we learned that producer actually can contribute a significant role in waste management improvement when they able to support waste bank, to support customers in collecting back their plastic packaging, set up a new scheme, giving reward and give incentive through financial system. I believe that producers can play a significant role. For further information, you can check our website, www.bintari.org. Thank you, Jennifer. I give it back to you.
Thank you so much. That was I've got tons of I think we all have questions. That was like amazing what you guys are doing. I mean, from the bottom up, and I had no idea really how. I mean, I've heard stories, but this is like the best presentation I've heard on like how well waste banks can function and yours seems to be a very holistic program. So super duper. Tanya, could you share your screen, and then once you got that up, we'll let you jump right into, well, literally jumping into the ocean. Did you swim today already?
No, not yet. But I will dive into the presentation, if I may, Jennifer.
Please.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Tania, and I'm from Diverse Clean Action Foundation. And for those of you who do not yet know about Diverse Clean Action, we are a small NGO based in Jakarta, Indonesia, where we already developed for the past 5 years, up to 6 years currently. And we have thousands of volunteers engaging with us to help on making our ocean healthier than before, especially regarding on marine debris issue. And other than doing citizens science research, we also do community development program. And one of the islands or the area that we're working firstly, and also got the support from the USAID, is Kepulauan Seribu. Kepulauan Seribu is actually located just offshore the capital city of Jakarta in Indonesia, where we do have 110 islands, but only 11 islands is actually inhabited by the populations. The islands is actually not that much in terms of land, so it is a little bit dense. And we are also impacted by the economically and culturally from the growing tourism activities. We usually, before pandemic, got up to 880,000 tourists per year. But currently, during the pandemic, it is also becoming the main source or impacting the current waste management system that is being in place. And also, in terms of the waste data, it is produced 230 metric tons of waste generated monthly by household activities, small businesses, tourism providers, and also boat owners, and also government officials, because there are also offices in the area. And actually, the unique things, the plastic waste generation per capita is actually higher rather than the mainland, also big cities. And just highlighting the differences between the waste management scheme in the islands, that is slightly different with the previous presentations from our colleagues from Semarang, because this is the area of islands. There is no retributions for the community. So they are actually being collected by the government, but it is also not 100% collected just yet before our program being in place on the area. So there's a lot of home or houses that is still mismanaging their waste, such as dumping their waste directly to the oceans or doing waste reclamations. And after the houses is collecting their waste into one trash bins, they usually getting picked by the government and then bring back to the landfill, the temporary landfill, and then bring back from with boat, and then goes into the mainland facilities of landfill. So it's a huge and also long journey of waste from the islands. But if we separated the waste, the recyclables can go into the waste bank that is placed in the islands, then bring to the mainland through boats. But before our program, it is usually by their own boats, or they need to invest to the transportation pay. And then the organic waste, it goes into the composting facilities that already being in plant. And the USAID program is supporting the program founded by Diverse Clean Action called SOSIS, or Save Our Ocean and Small Islands, where we're focusing on 4 main activity. The first one is we do tailored capacity building or workshops, and then we establish an effective intersectoral coordination mechanism, and then we induce circular economy efforts by increasing the recycling capacity rate through the waste bank and also informal sectors, and also we try to adopt the bulk store concept to reduce the amount of single-use plastics that we found on the area. Okay, so through that efforts, we try to give you like the schemes on how it is happening. So we goes house to houses for in each island. I think we have up to 200 until 1,000 houses in the area. So we go knocks door to doors. We do educations, and then we make sure that they separate their waste at least into 3 items: the organic waste, the residuals, and also the recyclables. And once they are committed, we implant a signage or a stickers that saying that they are committed and then willing to be transported separately by waste banks for the recyclables, but for the organic waste goes into the composting bins. And also there is one maggots facility, the black soldier fly facilities has been in place in the area, and then the residuals now getting decreased because it is already separated and goes to the landfill area. But we realized that 230 tons is not quite that much, but it's actually a lot if we think about the price that we need to transport the waste from the islands, right? So we want to make sure that we're focusing not only about recycling, but also about reducing, because Diverse Clean Action is founded as a scuba diving community. Where we realized when we do cleanups, we realized from the data, 63% out of the single-use plastic we found is actually single-use plastics such as flexibles, sachets, and etc. So we realized that only 26% of total plastic waste being produced on the area is monomaterial. So only 26% is actually has high value and is actually sellable to the waste banks. So it is matched the data that we found from this project and also from the cleanup data. So therefore, we collaborate with the local kiosks to implant a bulk store concept where we sell daily necessities such as soaps, detergents, and etc., where the community can actually bring their own bottles or jars and then they can refill it according to their wants. And actually, it is much more cheaper than the conventional one. Which is actually attracts the buyers because they are actually care more about the price rather than the quality. So this is getting exciting because now every month on one shops on one island, we can reduce up to 3,000 sachets per month. So it is a quite an achievement, even though you know it still start growing small. But now we already got the support from the one of the biggest cosmetics company in Indonesia. The name is The Body Shop Indonesia. Now we are duplicating the shops on one island into another island in Kepulauan Seribu. And so during the pandemic, this is also something that I'd like to highlight. Due to the help from USAID, where we already team up a lot of exciting youth in the area, we try to make sure that our system is keeping on place, because during the pandemic situation, several waste banks lost their buyers. And also they are afraid on you know, waste collecting and stuff like that. So during the pandemic, this kind of subsidy of transportation scheme is really helpful for the community. And yeah, so another thing that I'd like to highlight before I end up this presentation is the coordination from the government and also the grassroots level, because we realize that even though, you know, educating waste reductions and also waste recycling is getting a lot of hype from the community, but the most important thing is actually an integrated waste management system being in place by the government that is supported by the grassroots community and also high-level community or private sectors, because now we got support from Danone Aqua, one of the big brand of water bottles, and also we also from this lesson learned, rather than we also got the signing of MOU with the government. It is also being an inspiration and also a lesson learned that we are now duplicating into another 11 cities of coastal area across Indonesia with the help of KFC Indonesia and also One Young World community from UK. And we're looking forward to implement more from this lesson learned and to prove that actually small islands and also coastal area can contribute on recycling waste and reducing the amount of waste that goes to the oceans. So I think I'd end up my presentation now. And if you want to know more, you can email us on contact@diversecleanaction.org or on our website. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Do you sleep? I mean, none of you, I think, sleep, but the amount of work you guys are doing. But I think, oh yeah, the youth-led movement, they don't sleep, they don't need it. All right. So thank you so much. Again, many questions, but I'm going to hold it for now. So April, these are great projects that they're doing, grassroots things. But I noticed that, you know, like Mo mentioned, revolving funds, and you know, and Tenya is getting grants. But you're looking at financing at a bigger scale. Can you tell us a little bit about what you guys are doing in Indonesia?
Happy to, Jennifer. Thank you for the opportunity.
And let's make sure your screen shares.
Make sure
Awesome.
technology is working with us.
Technology
today.
can sometimes be our friend. Thank
Well,
you.
and I have to say, you know, I'm so thankful for this technology. I was, as both of the speakers were talking, or all three, I was just longing for the time when we will all be together in Indonesia or somewhere in the world again, to really be able to share our stories and work on collaboration. But, you know, I'm thankful for organizations like the Wilson Center who have been putting together these virtual sessions, because it makes me wonder if we'll have even more unique collaborations coming out of conversations like this, just knowing the different reach we may get versus us all being in, you know, one conference center together. So while I long for that day and I want to put on a wetsuit, enjoy Tanya and her work one day, thank you again, just for the opportunity. It really is a pleasure to be able to join this group. And, you know, just this topic of ocean plastics, it's something that I've been working on for more than a decade, long before there was really much known about the topic at all. It started with a lot of misinformation about the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, you know, estimated to be the size of Texas, and just some really inaccurate and generic descriptions when there was very little known about the scale and the source of it. But in recent years, we've really, through the help of some leading scientists and academics, really started to understand the issue a lot more, and giving us some direction on where we need to prioritize our efforts to really stop the flow. Scientists have estimated, and I know you all have probably seen a lot of these figures before, that there's 150 million tons of plastic in the ocean right now, and that's growing by 8 million tons each year. You know, we have information out of a study that Jenna Jambeck and some other academics released in 2015 that started to pinpoint some of the countries that were really contributing to the challenge. And that's where the interest in South and Southeast Asia started to really start to have a concentrated focus of groups to look at how we could help on stopping this. Ocean Conservancy estimated that a 45% reduction of global plastic leakage is possible by improving waste and recycling infrastructure just in 5 Asian countries. And we know that the cost to our ecosystem overall is significant. You know, some staggering numbers here on the screen, just of the impacts to our marine ecosystem, the loss in tourism, but also about the opportunity. I mean, if we think about the loss of the material loss of not having materials recaptured and reused, it's really significant. And so while the numbers are staggering around the impact, what we're also seeing is opportunity. We've heard a lot about circular economy in recent years, and about the economic potential of recapturing some of this material. And that's what we're looking at in South and Southeast Asia at Circulate Capital. For those of you who may not know our organization, we're an impact management company, investment management company focused on actively investing in startups and small and medium-sized businesses in South and Southeast Asia that are dedicated to preventing plastic from leaking into the ocean and advancing the circular economy. And while I'm sitting in the US today, I'll note that I'm the only team member in the US. The rest of our team is in the region. So the fund is actually based in Singapore, and then our investment managers are currently based, they're local in Indonesia, and in India. And then we're also looking in the other focus countries within South and Southeast Asia. And as Jennifer noted, our goal is to catalyze additional investment. So we want to prove the investment case around circular economy and help these local companies really start to address the ocean plastic issue. What you see here is the names of the companies that have provided funding to create Circulate Capital Ocean Fund. We have over $100 million committed from these large, well-known global brands and organizations, as well as the support of the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation in partnership with USAID. And it makes us a little unique as a fund in that these companies are not only providing funding, but they're also providing their technical knowledge, their supply chain knowledge, the global reach that they have to really start to support these local businesses on the ground within these countries. And I often talk about, we know that to solve this problem, it is a multi-billion-dollar challenge. And the million-dollar question, or in fact, the multi-billion-dollar question is, where will this funding come from? And while $100 million is significant, especially to those that are receiving support for it, it is just a drop in the bucket. So what we're trying to do is show an evidence-based track record, create a pipeline of investable opportunities and intermediated products that will serve as an on-ramp for other investments, and ultimately bring in the institutional investors that are needed to really tackle this challenge. So we've started this journey. Some of you may have seen some of our other launch announcements or some of our first investment announcements. We have invested a little over $40 million in 7 companies. The very first company, or the first 2, actually, one was in Indonesia and one in India, both focused on upcycling waste to value. So Treaty Oasis, a female-owned recycler based just outside of Jakarta, looking at how they could increase their capacity and quality of material of recycled PET, bottle to bottle. And that was one of our first announcements, along with Claire and her team. So really exciting to have that one underway as alongside Lucro, which also focuses on one of the challenges that we heard here already from Mo around flexible packaging, and those that are often challenging to recycle, looking at an innovative way to help bring more value and technologies to help support that space. Aside from those first 2 investments, we also announced 5 additional investments at the end of 2020. So despite COVID, luckily all of our work was underway. And I mentioned we had the investment team managers on the ground. So we have really started to look at the entire value chain. So while we started on this waste to value piece and really on the processing, we've also made investments in the collection space, additional investments in sorting and processing, and then looking at it from an innovation perspective and trying to understand how more technology can also play a role within this. With our limited time today, I won't be able to go into detail on all of these investments, but I would encourage you to take a look at our website at circulatecapital.com. We have video clips from each of these businesses that share a little bit more about that, and happy to make any connections as if there are certain ones that resonate with you as you learn a little bit more about it. The other piece I'd like to note as another reason we're a little bit unique from an investment fund perspective is we aren't just looking at financial returns. While that's important, and those who have provided funding expect that we will be providing a strong return on each of these investments. This is not philanthropic work. And that's, part of our goal is to be able to demonstrate the investability so we get that catalytic capital. But we also want to make sure that we are having an impact on the issue overall. So this slide is based on the projections that we expect just from these first 7 investments around the amount of plastic that we will prevent going into the environment by 2030, looking at it from a carbon emissions perspective, and then also thinking about it from a social, just the impacts that we can have in job creation and with human behavior. We will be releasing an impact report, or we're in draft stages of that later next month. So I hope you'll stay tuned as we share more about the individual investments and their overall impact. And then just in closing, I'd like to note that while the funding piece of this is very important, it really will take all of the different stakeholders and sectors working together, looking at from a public policy perspective, corporate commitments, and delivering on those commitments, as well as public-private collaboration, as well, and changing behavior. I mean, we had some great examples today of what's happening locally on the ground with behavior change. But we believe that by aligning these efforts, we can really build resilient and inclusive circular value chains, which is what will be critical, not only in Indonesia, but globally in solving this challenge. So just thank you again. And I would invite you to visit our website, as I noted, to learn more. Thank you so much. Yeah, I know I had you guys bolting through your PowerPoint presentations, and yeah, we are. You may know I Zoom crashed for a bit, so we weren't streaming live, and we're back live. Don't know if we're going to get too many questions because of the interruption, but I have questions. Maybe starting from the back, but it also kind of relates to a little bit like what Mo was talking about, and even Tanya, that all of you, all 3 of you are working with companies. And I guess April, can you tell me a little bit more about maybe dive down a little bit deeper in like to the like the treaty, the what is it? Treaty ONAS? What is it? Treaty Oasis. Treaty Oasis. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about, you say that it's a woman owned, and I mean, it still sounds rather small scale, but tell us a little bit more about what they're doing and how this might be able to be replicated. Yes. Jennifer, I would love for you to meet the women who started this organization at some time. As everyone, I think just seeing their entrepreneurial spirit, highly educated women who saw an opportunity to take waste and turn it into a valuable resource. So they started out very small and just became challenged as they are getting to a point where they want to be able to sell. So it's PET, so flaked PET bottles, the most common ones you would see for beverage containers that are captured and then can be recycled. And PET can be recycled into a number of things. It can be downgraded, as I would say, into fiber and carpets and things like that. Or if you really want to keep it in a more valuable state, turning it back into bottles is ideal. But with that, the challenge is having the appropriate equipment and technology to be able to do so in a way that you can sell it at a competitive yet price premium to brand owners. So whether it's local companies within Indonesia or some of the global brands that you saw on the screen, that's where they started to become challenged. I think we've seen this not only with Treaty Oasis, but with some of our investments in India as well. The waste and recycling space has just not been one that is well recognized as an investable space. So to go to traditional banks became a challenge. So that's where being able to provide them with funding, along with helping them identify, what might be the best technology and the best equipment. So with Treaty Oasis is helping them with ensuring that as they use their funding to purchase that new equipment, that then gets them to the quality needed to be able to sell to a Coca-Cola or Pepsi or Danone in this case, they're able to do that. So that's just one of the examples of one of the organizations that we're working with. And from a scale, I will say, our goal is then to be able to replicate that in other parts of the world. So.
Well, good. And maybe Mo, hopping over to you. You mentioned briefly that you've been partnering with an Indonesian company about some of the more problematic plastics. Are there other partnerships that the Bintari Foundation that you're doing or that you're going to do to help push forward your work for the waste banks and waste reduction?
Well, actually, we also work with several companies, Indofood, and then also Coca-Cola, local Coca-Cola. But again, I think they still invest a small initiative and try to attract other producers also to do the same thing. Unfortunately, only big companies doing that, while other companies is not invest on that. So maybe they also think about the competitiveness of product because they invest to take back their plastic waste, and at the same time other companies is doing nothing. So I think the role of government here is really to set up how the competition can be fair and how the financial scheme could be regulated.
Do you think, just kind of relate, you mentioned that the government role, I mean, I know that the Indonesian government they have a enhanced producer responsibility plan. Do you think the government might be banning certain kinds of problematic plastics? Is that something, do you think that's a direction that they're going? Or right now, the focus seems to be a lot on trying to improve the waste management system.
Yeah, the government already set up a kind of roadmap and set up a milestone that, for example, like sachet should be not used in 2030, for example. But also, I think the government need to foster a lot, especially to big company that contribute a lot in waste production. And normally now the government only push the company that have good initiative, but with company who are not so supportive, this go without any direction from the government.
Okay, great. Claire, I want to ask you a question, and also open up to, you can ask some of your colleagues a question. Maybe just kind of looking ahead, like you've done all this work supporting groups like this, and you gave us a really short intro of what you want to do in the next project with focusing on the 3 cities. Can you tell us a little bit more about one of those? Will they all be Indonesian cities? And that's a quick question. Are they all Indonesian?
Oh, so I mentioned 3 cities in Indonesia. It'll be about 22 in our 7 countries overall. But in Indonesia, we are looking forward to building on the work done by Bintari Foundation in Semarang. That will be one of our first cities to work in. And in all those places, it is important really to have good local government partners. So that is when we think about where we will work, we think at the national level. Is there some level of commitment? Are they serious about going forward? And the government of Indonesia has shown that, but also at a city level, that is also important because it's not easy to tackle this challenge. So we need good partners because at the end of the day, ultimately, it is a municipal responsibility, waste collection, and to extend it does take commitment. It takes increasing their capacity and also their revenues. In fact, so I wanted to actually turn it back to Mo because I thought it was very good how you mentioned, there's so many people in developing countries, low and middle income countries that don't have access to municipal services. And in some cases, there's been champions to say, we need to somehow make sure that electricity and water is available to all families, but there hasn't been as much of a push for making sure that waste collection is also universally provided, especially in cities where it's easier because it's it's closer. So getting the city, getting the people to realize to be committing to cross subsidies where people who can pay more will pay more so that that service can be extended to other people. I wanted to hear more about how do you build that commitment.
Well, yeah, it is a very interesting issue because when waste management governance is still set up like now, where a community has the right to self-organize and self-finance the collection, it is discriminative for the low-income community. And in our opinion, the government have to do something by take over the responsibility of waste collection from household, transfer into temporary storage, and then transporting to landfill. And where the government get the funding to extend that service, one important point is from the community fee. If I can compare the community fee for waste collection is about $1 to $3 per month, while for the retribution is only less than 50 cents. So if both sources can be combined, of course, government can generate more income to improve the waste management service. And also government has to apply cross subsidy where high income community subsidize the low income community. And it's only can happen if the government manage all the waste management system from the household until the landfill.
Thanks for that. Actually, we just got a question in from, if I can ask this one, that was great, Mo, I appreciate that. We got a question from Enda from USAID. I don't know if that's from the mission office, but so this one is for Tenia. Said, understanding the challenges faced by Divers Clean Action when implementing the activities, especially that some of the plastic waste washed offshore to the thousands of islands are actually from the Jakarta mainland. I mean, because Tenia, you focused on how much waste is actually being produced on the islands and that it did have a high per capita rate. But Enda asks, how does the Divers Clean Action engage the Jakarta provincial government to help reduce the waste that's coming from the mainland? Is that something you're working on?
Yeah, I think it's quite unique and also interesting that how we can see the problems on the islands is actually really related with the mainland activity and of course policy. For example, in our area that we're working on, it is actually a part of the government of Jakarta, but it's a different region. So actually the policy, the planning, and also the budgeting comes from the government level, from the governance, from the Jakarta province. Therefore, through our program for the past 2 years, we also established a long-term and also a sustainable agreement with the government of DKI Jakarta, where we try to make sure that these islands where we are working on 5 out of 11 will be duplicated into another, the rest of the islands, and also can be supported in terms of subsidiary of the waste transportation scheme. Because as what I've mentioned earlier, not every places can implement a waste retribution price for the community because it is middle and to lower income, or simply there is no facilities being in place yet in the area. Therefore, I think the important role is not only about collaborating with the government, which have already maybe invest a lot of money as well, but also try to collaborate with the private sector as well, because in terms of transportations on waste boat in the area that is really far from the mainland, it is something that is quite really costly. And I think that's what, and also how the private sectors can also play an important role on that, because nowadays the recycling business industries is also only focusing on the big islands of Indonesia, for example, in Java, but also for our friends in Papua or other places, they need to transport it through boat into bigger provinces and also costs a lot. Rather than ours. So I think it is really important to collaborate with government, but also with the private sectors and other related stakeholders.
Speaking of private sector, my ears perked up because it made sense. Tourism being a major source of waste. I mean, we're seeing this throughout Asia. I mean, China has the same problem, and on their high tourist areas, big mountains of plastic. What about, I mean, and I don't know, have you guys been engaging the tourist industry? I mean, they could actually maybe think more in terms of preventative instead of just like passing out the water bottles to everyone. But tell me a little bit more about, can you engage them, or what the challenge is with the tourism?
Yeah, so as like what I mentioned earlier, we started our program with a grassroots level of discussions. We do workshops, we do tailored capacity building according to their own each job. Or each community. And one of them is actually the tourism providers. And we realize that they actually care, and they want to change, and they understand the impact of decreased quality of environment because of the mismanagement of waste. But again, they don't have the capacity yet. Therefore, we train them and also we provide them about the reusable cutleries that they can use. Of course, in terms of funding, we need to make it more sustainable. So there is a credits way and also another type of funding to make sure that they can produce ecotourism facilities. And also they will separate their waste and then bring their waste into the waste bank to make sure that they can also gain income or incentives towards that efforts. But again, we realize that islands are open gates. Everybody can come to the area of islands. Therefore, we also try to secure and also reduce the amount of single-use plastics that coming into the islands from the Jakarta Bay. So we already did a trial with the government actually earlier this year. We tried to have the official of governments to check the belongings of the tourists and also the local people that wants to go to the islands. And if they bring single-use plastic bags, they will turn it into reusable bags, and also they will educate them to not littering, and then also to do waste reduction effort, and also becoming a client of the refill stores that is already being in place on the islands. So I think that's one of the way that we do to collaborate with the tourism sectors.
Great. I just got another question that came in from Piper Campbell, former U.S. ambassador to ASEAN. She was really happy. She thanked the Wilson Center for putting on the meeting. That's always nice. And she said that she got to see Divers Clean Action in action, and was inspired by Eutenia. Her question to the panel is, plastic waste is a problem with both domestic and international dimensions. In your advocacy, and I say work, what arguments do you find resonate most with government officials and the common people? I'm assuming she means in Indonesia. Is it better to make the case that plastic waste, like climate change, is an international and national security issue? Or is it more compelling to tell the story of how it impacts individuals? That was a question from Piper. Who wants to start?
Should I answer it?
Sure.
I think, yeah. And I also like to thank you for the warm regards and also warm messages about how we tried, because we work on not only with Indonesian government, but also with the US Embassy. We gather youth from all across ASEAN region to do development programs and also to duplicate our programs. We realized that data is actually something that really play a big role on that. So seldom we show them about the international brands of waste that we found during cleanups. and we realized that actually ocean is one. So it is transboundary issues. We need a collaboration from not only in Indonesia, but also on the region of ASEAN. Therefore, we can make sure that there is no waste that leaking in each countries. So we can help one another by helping ourselves. So I think that's also something that is understandably easily with the government, and they are supporting our movement as well.
Does someone else want to respond? Mo, I think you're ready to jump in.
Yeah, sure. I think it is very challenging issue, and in our opinion, it should be handled as an international problem, because when we talk about in this industry 4.0, the transfer of material from abroad to inside the country is really massive. I can give example in the online shopping. Many Indonesian use online application and then order for some product from China or from other country, and then it's just and the waste is goes to Indonesia. Not only the packaging, but also the whole wrapping and so on. And maybe the wrapping itself is much is more weight than the content itself. So I think we need to consider about that. And until now, who is responsible to manage that waste? It's not clear. So if we can sit together and discuss as international trading, international problem, that maybe we can solve that problem as well.
I want to inject in here, since I am the China Environment Forum, that what is encouraging, because the Chinese government they've also been talking about enhanced producer responsibility. They're not quite there yet, but they have been putting a lot of pressure on their e-commerce industries to innovate. And I keep thinking, April, you've got me wondering, I'm like, what kind of catalytic capital do they have in China? I mean, in some ways they've got the authoritarian capital, right? You said you're going to make this right. But I think that we are starting to see some interesting experimentation in China in terms of reducing the packaging and also having some kind of take back. I think it's a little more difficult when it goes all the way to Indonesia, but you're right. I'm glad you highlighted that. We didn't even talk about the packaging, the shipping stuff. Claire, did you want to leap in on anything here?
Yes, I wanted to say, with regards to motivating people, I mean, there's the government, which really is responsible for the policy, but in terms of behaviors, we found that our grantees have found many different ways to educate the community and to make them aware. And sometimes it's the connection with the human health, because mismanaged waste is also those areas where you're going to find higher prevalence of infectious disease and vector-borne diseases. In Sri Lanka, communities were very much convinced by through that to reduce the use of plastic and to make sure it wasn't ending up into the waterways, because there were these channels, and that's where the dengue fever was being caused by the mosquitoes breeding in those little parts of water that were captured by plastic containers, or when it gets clogged, when the drains get clogged. So just wanted to say, we found that you need to have so many different routes of communicating, because different arguments resonate with different populations.
April, I don't know if maybe this question doesn't, I mean, I was actually kind of curious if you can comment on this question, but I was also kind of curious about some other coming down the pike for you in terms of the kinds of capital you want to create. I mean, I'm wondering if some of it also is a little bit more upstream, because most of the things you talked about were dealing with like recycling, repurposing waste. Are any of do you have, I don't know if it's secret, but do you have anything in the pipeline that may be moving the conversation, the corporate conversation and action more upstream?
Yeah, and I'll start with just that last question, that this has to be a global conversation with local solutions. And I think that's what we've seen is having these local investments on the ground, but so many of the countries globally can learn from each other, and how we start to replicate and share that knowledge in emerging and developed markets. We are all globally contributing to this issue, and finding solutions to it is critical. around kind of that upstream. So you're right. In the very beginning of our investment strategy, we have been focused largely on more end-of-life recycling, but we are looking more upstream and have a number of, I thought it was interesting when Tanya was talking about the refill stations and looking at it from a circular perspective on reduction overall and what are innovations that we can look at, next generation refillable systems, at more advanced recycling technologies that allow us to recapture and reclaim value in a simpler way. Some of the other areas that we're looking at. And I didn't note earlier, but right now we, from this funding, we have deployed a large piece of that in India. But in 2021, the focus is really on trying to round out that portfolio within South and Southeast Asia. So, within Indonesia and the other countries as well. So we'll be looking really throughout that value chain of where we see the greatest opportunity, not only for those financial returns, but impact, as I noted as well.
Great, I appreciate that. And one thing, maybe we could do a whole meeting on this, but just I was really caught with, because you did talk about green jobs, April, right? And all of you have that. I mean, that the kind of like rising up, so many people are in the informal sector working in this space, but it's also a conversation we're having in the United States and even in China, that they're talking about investing in the waste sector does promote green jobs. So is the time here? Is it April?
Yeah, I mean, I think, particularly in the countries that we're talking about now, in South and Southeast Asia, but also in the US, I'm optimistic that the time is now. But just seeing the increase in livelihoods, particularly since so much of the work happens with the informal sector and how we move them into formalized roles. So much of the great work that's happening with these waste banks and others that start to provide the education and the structure and even just basic resources. This is really outside of the Circulate Capital work, but what these other great organizations are doing that then provide that supply chain that's needed to help make some of these investments successful, where we're deploying capital right now.
Okay, thanks so much. And will sachets is sachets part of any of these business models, or do you see sachets riding out into the sunset eventually?
Well, they're clearly a large challenge. So as we look at those areas where there is, this low value material, so there is some work underway from an innovation perspective on how do you create value from that. And I'll note, not a part of Circulate Capital, but the Incubator Network, which is a nonprofit that we have partnered with as well, has an innovation challenge currently on these types of very difficult to recycle materials. So I can share that link later for those who may have solutions, because while we are making investments right now on businesses that are ready to go, there's a lot of innovation that needs to happen through startups and really creating that ecosystem of incubators. So through organizations like the Incubator Network, we can start to work on some of those challenges while also looking at alternative solutions around refill stations and those types of opportunities that are becoming more readily and hopefully more acceptable to consumers.
No, thank you so much for mentioning that, because I actually was going to mention that after this, sometime soon, April, I want to come talk to you, because in this, so I mentioned I'm starting a second year working on our Turning the Tide project, where we're going to be doing more work. We're still going to keep in touch with our Indonesian friends. We're going to do some more in Thailand and Vietnam. But one of the themes is we're going to be focusing on rivers, but also looking at innovators like you're talking about, April, because we're seeing a lot of small, but I think, small, you got to start somewhere with some of these. So I think it's really kind of exciting to see these kind of developments, and it's fabulous that USAID, that you're not just in Indonesia, you're throughout Asia. So of course I'll be knocking on your door about, who are you working with in Thailand and Vietnam? Because I think that my job, we're trying to raise the conversation and also, bring in some of the Chinese voices. I have to thank the Japan Foundation Center for Global Partnership for supporting this work. And also I want to tell the audience that hopefully next week, if not the week after, it's not April Fool's, I'm not tricking you, but that we're going we have a publication coming out called Inside Out, and all four of the speakers here were authors in that publication, talking about a little bit more detail about the stories of how their work is promoting closing the loop on plastic in Indonesia. So again, I want to thank all of you for, I want to thank you for the work that you're doing to help protect our oceans and human health and all that. And Claire, since it's the USAID team here, any final quick comment from you as we wrap up in the last minute?
Thank you, Jennifer. It was great to reconnect with our partners in Indonesia and Circulate Capital. We have been working now 4 years, and going forward, we're very excited through Clean Cities Blue Ocean to help cities create this systems change, and want to continue the conversation with you in the Wilson Center. Thank you.
Thanks so much. So again, thank you, Mo, Tanya, April, and Claire, and thank you in the audience. Sorry we disappeared. Go watch the beginning of the video on YouTube. It'll be up shortly. And again, thank you so much, everyone, and have a really good morning or good evening if you're in Indonesia. Bye-bye.